There are wounds that do not speak in words, and yet they hum beneath the surface of the soul like a song without a singer, a melody older than time itself. They are not wounds born of a single moment, but of centuries buried beneath layers of earth and memory, like ruins of an ancient city beneath the feet of an unsuspecting traveler. You walk through life bewildered, sensing the tremor of something unnamed, not because of what has happened to you, but because something within you remembers what your mind cannot hold. These are the primordial wounds older than memory, older than the blood that runs through your veins. Before we begin, take a moment to like and subscribe. The more you engage and stay with the content, the more YouTube shares these timeless insights with others. By doing so, you're not only helping this channel grow, but also spreading Carl Jung's transformative wisdom to those seeking meaning and inner truth. Let's dive into the depth of the psyche together. They are the shadows of your lineage, the grief of those who came before you, woven into the fabric of your being. You may whisper, "I feel broken, but I do not know why." And I will tell you, it is not just your own sorrow that you carry. It is the echo of ancestral voices, the unwept tears of countless generations. This pain has a name, the ancestral shadow. It is not a ghost that haunts your house, but a presence that lives in your cells, in your dreams, in the trembling of your soul when you are alone at night. Over the years, I have sat with dreams that speak of these wounds, a bleeding tree growing in barren soil, a man pursued by voices that do not belong to him, a child painting visions no eyes have seen. These images are not accidents. They are the language of the deep unconscious, which speaks not in prose, but in symbol. The wound you cannot name is encoded there, written in a tongue older than speech. The soul, unbound by the prison of time, carries within it the memories of the species, and from that ocean of memory rise the archetypes, eternal patterns shaping human experience. The orphan who forever searches for belonging, the betrayed lover who walks with unhealed scars, the exile who wanders with no home, the abandoned mother who cries into the void. These are not mere metaphors. They are living presences within the psyche, and when they seize you, they distort the way you see the world. You may ask, why do I always feel unsafe? Even in safety, perhaps the orphan archetype has its hands on your heart, whispering its ancient fear. Perhaps your trembling comes not from this life, but from the shadow of your grandmother's silent scream, your grandfather's buried terror, your lineage's forgotten grief. Trauma does not honor the borders of time. It flows like water, seeping into every crack it finds, until it becomes your own. When you cannot explain your suffering, it is because you are trying to explain it with the wrong instrument. Language cannot hold what predates it. You must descend into the dream, into the body, into the places that remember. You must let the pain rise like smoke from a fire you did not start. In my work, when a soul comes to me crying, I hurt, but I do not know why. I do not seek to diagnose them. I ask them to dream. I ask what secrets their mothers held, what stories their fathers buried, what silences their ancestors guarded with their lives. For in those silences lie entire continents of the psyche, unseen yet alive, waiting to be acknowledged. The unconscious is not a landfill of forgotten things. It is a realm, a living kingdom, filled with images striving to restore the lost balance. Ignore it, and it does not vanish. It turns against you, becoming illness, confusion, despair. That inexplicable pain you carry may well be its voice, crying to be heard, not with logic, not with analysis, but with the openness of a heart that dares to listen. Many of you are carrying grief that is not of this time, Perhaps your ancestors fled burning cities, carrying only ashes in their hearts. Perhaps they lived with unspeakable terror, or committed acts so heavy they could never confess them. The guilt, the fear, the unresolved sorrow did not die with them. It wove itself into your body, your nervous system, your instincts. This is not metaphor. This is truth, both psychological and spiritual. History that is not mourned becomes symptom. I do not tell you this to glorify pain or sanctify suffering. I tell you because within this pain lies the key to your transformation. The wound you cannot explain is the doorway. If you dare to face it, not as a flaw, but as a sacred threshold, it will reveal what words cannot. It will initiate you. There is a dream I once knew, where a child sat beside a sealed well. The child wept endlessly, unable to say why. One night, lightning split the sky and cracked the stone lid. From the depths rose a voice, older than the stars, and it said only, "Now you may drink. This is what happens when you let your unspoken grief breathe. It does not destroy you. It feeds you." The sealed well becomes a source. And the images, oh, the images, they come when the soul begins to awaken. A man dreams of wolves encircling his bed, the instincts long suppressed calling him back. A woman dreams of drowning in black waters, the emotions she has denied demanding to be felt. A young one dreams of wandering through a forest at night, the shadow guiding them toward what they fear to see. These visions are not chaos. They are the psyche's attempt to heal itself. What we repress becomes the shadow. What we deny becomes the voice that haunts our nights. The more we run, the louder it grows. And the pain we cannot name is often the place where the shadow waits to be met, where the ancestors wait to be heard, where the soul waits to be reclaimed. Now, as the night deepens and the candle burns to its last breath, I ask you to pause. Place your hand upon your chest and feel the rhythm of your heart. This is where the past meets the present. This is where you begin. Allow the pain you cannot name to speak, not as an enemy, but as a guide. It has come to lead you home. And now, I offer you a small ritual. Numbers, like symbols, speak in their own tongue. Choose one, not with your mind, but with the part of you that dreams. Let it be the number that rises unbidden, the one that hums in your bones. Let it reflect the theme that touched you here: transformation, the void, the shadow, the eternal dance of death and rebirth, the archetype that called your name. Write this number in the comments as you would carve it into stone, as if casting a pebble into a still, dark lake. Watch as its ripples spread into the unseen, touching others who will leave their numbers beside yours. Together, these numbers will form a constellation, a secret map drawn by those who dare to journey inward. Leave your number and let it speak for you, as the archetypes once spoke in dreams. Leave it, and let the shadows know you have heard them. Leave it, and the well within you may begin to open. The shadow grows in darkness, and so long as you refuse to turn toward it, it will continue to haunt you, like a child crying in a locked room of your soul. Some of you may ask, but how do I know what is mine and what is not? And I say, it is all yours until you have integrated it. The soul makes no distinctions between my trauma and ancestral trauma. It only knows that something is unwhole and it longs to be made whole. This is not moral. This is psychological alchemy. To face the pain, you cannot explain this. To step into the archetype of the wounded healer, the one who is initiated by their own suffering into deeper wisdom. The wound does not disqualify you from healing. It qualifies you. In fact, your wound may be your calling, disguised as chaos. Like Chiron, the centaur who could heal all wounds except his own. You too may carry a sacred injury, not as punishment, but as spurtau. I have seen people become whole through their wound, but never by avoiding it, only by turning toward it and asking, "What do you want from me?" The pain that cannot be explained is often a demand for depth, for myth, for ritual, for symbol. It cannot be resolved by information. It requires initiation. When you dream of snakes, you are dreaming of transformation. When you dream of fire, you are dreaming of purification. When you feel abandoned for no reason, you are being invited to meet the part of you that was left behind long ago. Not by you, but by the generations before you, who had no time or tools to grieve. This is the sacred task of your time, not merely to heal yourself, but to feel what others could not, to weep the tears that were forbidden in your lineage, to scream the screams that never escaped the throats of your foremothers. You are the one carrying the unfinished story, and your pain, that strange, inexplicable ache, is the part of you that knows the story must be finished. You may be the first in your family to turn inward, to break the silence, to question the patterns. This is not weakness. It is heroic. It is the journey of the self from unconscious fragmentation to conscious wholeness. And it begins not with answers, but with listening to the wound. Let me tell you something that may sound strange. The psyche wants to heal. It longs for integration. It offers us symbols, dreams, symptoms, even pain, not as punishment, but as guides. But we must learn how to listen, not with intellect alone, but with reverence, with imagination, with silence. I do not offer you solutions in the modern sense. I offer you, at this chant, a journey into the underworld of your own unconscious, because that is where the wound lives, not in the daylight, but in the darkness beneath. And it is only by going down that you may rise again whole. Let me walk beside you further into the shadowed garden of the soul, where the roots of your suffering are not linear, but spiral downward, like the coils of a serpent, symbol of both poison and healing, of death and resurrection. You see, your pain is not a dead thing. It breathes, it has memory, it has ritual. And if you do not sit with it, it will rise again and again in disguise, demanding your attention through anxiety, through depression, through strange longings and unexplained aversions. It wants your initiation. It does not want your avoidance. Have you ever considered why certain patterns repeat in your life with no logical explanation? Why you choose the same kind of lover who abandons you, the same kind of friend who drains you, the same environments that make you feel unseen. These are not merely personal choices. They are the echo of an archetype that has not yet been integrated. It chooses for you until you become conscious of it. You are not entirely free until you descend to the source of that echo and listen. Imagine, if you will, a young woman whose mother was never emotionally present, whose grandmother was a servant silenced in a patriarchal home, whose great-grandmother died in childbirth, crying for help that never came. This young woman may now feel panic at being alone, even in peace. She may feel the terror of abandonment, not because she is being abandoned, but because the feminine within her lineage has never felt safe to exist in solitude. That panic is not an error. It is a messenger. And so I ask, what is the myth that you are unconsciously living? Because each of you are a character inside a great and ancient story. And unless you know which myth has taken residence in your unconscious, you will act it out blindly. You will call it fate. But it is not fate. It is a script. And scripts can be rewritten not by denial, but by dissent. This is why I speak of active imagination. You must allow the images of your unconscious to emerge without censorship. You must sit with your dreams, not as random noise, but as divine telegrams sent from the soul. You must draw your fear, speak to your anger, dance, your grief. These are the rituals of inner alchemy. The pain that cannot be explained begins to soften when you give it a shape. When you say to it, You may exist. I will not exile you. Because what is exile, if not the very thing you do to yourself? When you reject your own wounds, you become your own jailer. You abandon the inner child who weeps beneath the surface. And that child, orphaned by your survival strategies, begins to sabotage your present. It becomes a shadow who whispers, "You are not safe, even in love." It becomes the saboteur who says, "You will be left even when someone stays." This is not madness. This is a wound asking to be named. And when you name it, when you trace its shape across time and dreams, something happens. It begins to lose its monstrous face. It begins to weep. The monster is not evil. It is misunderstood grief. It is the past demanding to be included in your wholeness. You were not born broken. You were born into a world that was already fragmenting. And you, dear listener, are the alchemist. The task of turning this ancient pain into meaning has fallen to you. You may resist it. You may say, "Why me?" But the deeper question is, why not me? Perhaps the wound chose you because you have the capacity to bear it consciously. And consciousness, my friend, is the medicine that transforms the unconscious into gold. There is a danger, however, in trying to solve your pain with the intellect alone. The intellect is a brilliant flame, but it casts shadows. And some of what you carry must be felt through the body, through symbols, through ritual. That is why religion, when true, was once a container for transformation, a sacred language for the psyche. But modern man has lost his myths, and in doing so has lost his map. Now, instead of sacred stories, we have diagnoses. Instead of initiation, we have numbing. We exile our sorrow into pills. We fear silence. We flee solitude. And so the wound festers. It becomes chronic. It becomes cultural. And we forget that the soul does not respond to anesthesia. It responds to attention. A patient once told me she dreamed of walking through a museum of mirrors. In each mirror, she saw not her reflection, but the face of an ancestor. Some wept, some screamed, some looked directly at her and said nothing. And she awoke trembling with a deep knowing that she was carrying the silence. She had come to therapy for anxiety, but what she found was a lineage of frozen grief waiting for a voice. Do you see the pain that cannot be explained is often a relic, an artifact from another epoch of your soul? And you are the archaeologist. You must brush away the dust with reverence, not rush. You must ask, who was not allowed to cry in my family? Who vanished without song? What part of me still lives there, hungry for recognition? There is a miss I cherish, that of Persephone. Abducted into the underworld, she became queen, not by choice, but by transformation. Your wound is your descent, but the descent, if embraced, becomes sovereignty. Not the kind of control you crave in your fear, but the kind of deep authority that comes only from knowing your own darkness. I am not inviting you into despair. I am inviting you into depth, into the realm where pain becomes poetry, where grief becomes ritual, where wounds become wombs for new creation. You do not need to be cured, you need to be witnessed. And in that sacred witnessing, a strange thing happens. The wound begins to shine, not because it disappears, but because it reveals its purpose. It becomes your oracle, your compass, your call to initiation. And if you are brave enough to follow it, you will discover that the pain you once could not explain was, in fact, the language of your soul calling you home. And so, my friend, do not rush to label what aches. Do not silence what trembles. Do not dismiss what returns in dreams and memory. Instead, light a candle. Sit in stillness. Ask the pain, what image are you? And wait. You will be surprised what speaks. Sometimes a phase, sometimes a forest. Sometimes the echo of a name you've never heard and yet always known. This is the work. This is the mystery. And if you stay with it, not only will you begin to understand your pain, you will begin to transform it into something sacred. There is a place in every soul where words no longer suffice. It is there in that raw, luminous silence that the true alchemy begins. You must understand when your pain has no language, no source you can name, no origin you can explain. It is likely that you are no longer dealing with the personal. You are entering the archetypal layer of the unconscious, where stories repeat themselves in countless variations across centuries, cultures, and bodies. You are entering myth. I do not use the word myth to mean fantasy. I use it as the ancients did to describe a truth too great for facts, a force too sacred to be captured by mere events. Your unexplainable wound is likely the imprint of a mythic pattern whose time has come to be revealed. Perhaps you are living the myth of Inanna, descending into the underworld to face your own death and be reborn. Perhaps you are reenacting the wound of Prometheus, punished for bringing light to a world that fears it. Perhaps you are carrying story of Psyche, torn between trust and betrayal, love and individuation. Each myth carries within it a symbolic medicine, but only when it is seen, not acted out unconsciously. If you do not bring your myth to consciousness, it will govern you. It will leak through your decisions, haunt your relationships, and shape your very identity. But if you name it, if you learn its rhythm and offer it a place at your table, it transforms. It becomes a living companion instead of a tormentor. Now listen closely. The unconscious does not forget what your ancestors could not process. Your psyche inherits as symbols. What they denied becomes your shadow. What they exiled becomes your inheritance. If they abandoned the feminine, you may feel a yearning you cannot name. If they denied the masculine, you may feel powerless in the face of life. If they silenced the mystical, you may fear your own dreams. The body remembers. The soul remembers. You are a living library of what has been and what longs to become. In my own life, I was haunted by dreams of ancient figures, forgotten rites, and subterranean chambers filled with strange light. These were not hallucinations. They were revelations. The psyche, when honored, begins to reveal its mysteries in image, in voice, in intuition. But you must be willing to let go of linear logic. You must become a symbolic thinker, one who listens not just for meaning, but for mystery. So when the pain arises again, that tightness in your chest, that heaviness in your gut, that inexplicable sorrow, when nothing has happened, pause, ask yourself, what image comes to me now? Do I see a mountain, a child, a locked door? Do not rush to interpret. Let the image speak. This is the beginning of your dialogue with the unconscious. A woman once came to me, tormented by panic attacks. No doctor could explain them, but in her dreams, a bird with broken wings appeared over and over again. She began to draw it, speak to it, and eventually, she remembered a story passed down from her grandmother, a child who was never allowed to sing. Suddenly, the bird made sense. It was the silenced voice of the feminine, begging to be set free. Her panic was not random. It was a sacred demand for expression. You must understand, healing is not always about removing the wound. Sometimes it is about reconciling with it, offering it a seat at the altar of your life. Your job is not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it, to make it conscious, to say, I see you, I welcome you. Let us walk together now. This is the deeper initiation, not the fixing of pain, but the transformation of relationship to it. when you relate to your wound as a teacher rather than an enemy. It begins to open when you ask it what it needs rather than what it means. It begins to soften, and in that space, a new self begins to form, not one free of pain, but one no longer ruled by it. There is a reason the old rites of passage involved descent, isolation, symbolic death. The old self had to dissolve before the true self could emerge. But modern life does not offer us these rites. We must create them ourselves. You must make your descent conscious. You must honor the breakdown as a threshold, not a failure. You must understand that when everything you identified with begins to fall away, it is not the end. It is the beginning of individuation. Individuation is not a concept. It is a fire. It burns through false identity, inherited belief, collective hypnosis. It strips away the masks until only the essential remains. And this process often begins with a pain that makes no sense because it is not supposed to make sense. It is supposed to lead you inward to the truth you have not yet dared to see. And so I ask you, what are you being asked to descend into? What have you avoided naming because it felt too ancient, too big, too dark? That is where your gold is buried. That is where your wholeness waits. Not in avoidance, not in pretending you are fine, but in entering the place. You fear with eyes open. This journey is not for the faint of heart, but you are not alone. The archetypes are with you. The ancestors are with you. The self, that deep, mysterious center of your being, is calling, and it will not abandon you. It will test you. Yes, it will dismantle you, but only to remake you in truth. And as you walk this path, you will begin to see differently. You will look at your pain and say, I know you. You are the beginning of something holy. You will speak to your dreams and say, I will not dismiss you. I will listen. You will feel the ache return and say, this is not regression. This is remembrance. And slowly, like dawn breaking through mist, you will become one who lives in the light of the wound transformed. If you have followed me this far, you are no longer merely listening. You are remembering not with the mind, but with the soul. Because to remembering is not the recall of facts. It is the awakening of ancient knowing that has always lived within you, waiting to be reactivated by suffering, by symbols, by dreams. Now we arrive at the heart of the mystery, the rebirth that follows descent. What rises from the ashes is not the same self that entered the fire. Something has died. Something has been sacrificed, but not in vain. What emerges is the self, not the ego inflated with ideas, but the sacred totality of your being, reconciled with shadow, awakened to image, infused with meaning. It is the union of opposites, the marriage of light and dark, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, child and elder. This self is not achieved through will. It is not a trophy to be earned. It is a state of being that arises when you stop rejecting the parts of you that were never broken to begin with, only buried. You do not become whole by perfection. You become whole by inclusion. You become whole when you say, this pain, too, belongs. I have said before, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Now, you know what I meant. That unexplained pain was not a sign of defect. It was the entrance to the sacred. The darkness was not a mistake. It was the birth canal of your inner truth. And so the final movement is not escape, but return. The journey downward has yielded its gift, and now the task is to carry it back into the world. This is what the hero always forgets, that healing is not only personal, it is also collective. What you retrieve from your own shadow becomes the light that helps others find their way. Your integration becomes medicine, not just for yourself, but for the soul of the world. That is why I speak now. not only to the one who suffers, but to the healer within you. Not the one who fixes, but the one who witnesses with reverence. You become the one who can sit beside another in their descent, not with answers, but with presence. You become the sacred container, the vessel that holds paradox, mystery, transformation. And if you ask, what is my role in this great pattern of wounds and archetypes? I say it is not to break the chain by force, but to absorb it with awareness, to allow what was unconscious to become conscious in you. In this way, the inherited wound ends with you, not in silence, but in meaning. It is a holy thing to carry an ancient pain and not turn it into violence. It is a sacred path to feel what generations could not bear and transmute it into love. This is the work of the inner mystic, the unseen revolutionary. It happens in dreams, in tears and journal page in still mornings, where no one sees you. But God, do not let the world fool you. Just because your healing is invisible does not mean it is not real. The soul knows the unconscious knows, and slowly the body begins to relax its armor. The dreams become kinder. The inner child steps into the light. You begin to create not to escape the wound, but to honor it. And that is when you know you have returned. And so my final words are, these: you are not your pain, but your pain holds part of your map. You are not your trauma, but your trauma is the threshold of your myth. You are not your shadow, but your shadow is the womb of your gold, and the wound that cannot be explained. It is older than you, yes, but it is also wiser than you know. Listen to it, hold it, let it initiate you. And then when the time comes, turn and offer your light to the one still lost in the dark. That is how we heal the soul of the world. One remembered wound at the time, one reborn self at a time, and you, dear soul, you are already becoming home.